How bad are the roads and bridges in the Garden State? Well, by most accounts, pretty bad. New Jersey's roads and bridges are in serious decline. In fact, many argue that the state's infrastructure is crumbling and that the situation is only getting worse. Just how bad is it, and how should New Jersey pay for its critical transportation needs? Joining us now to make sense of New Jersey's infrastructure reality is Steve Adubato, my co-anchor on New Jersey Capitol Report. Steve, welcome.
Hey, Raf.
So, how bad is it?
It's bad. I mean, New Jersey Department of Transportation, study after study after study, comes back with the same thing. New Jersey roads and bridges are crumbling.
Are they really crumbling?
Oh, they're in disrepair. They are in various states of disrepair. And every report you read, you know, it just gets scarier and scarier. And there have been bridges across this country that have collapsed. And look, the last thing I want to do here on public television is scare people and say that I'm going to predict a bridge is going to collapse. But you can Google it and find out that across this country it's happened. And the biggest reason it happens, Raf, is because the proper investments are not made in infrastructure. No, not a sexy.
Why not?
It's not a sexy term.
New Jersey is a transportation hub. Infrastructure is critical to its success. Why are the investments not being made?
My analysis of this is not complex. It's because if you can't see it, if the rust is underneath, and you're driving across the Pulaski Skyway, or you're riding on Route 3 coming into Manhattan on the Jersey side, you're like, well, okay, I got a pothole, I got to pay $500 to fix my tire. Who do I blame? I don't really know. So a lot of politicians think they can get away with the fact that you can't really blame anyone in particular. The problem is this was supposed to be taken care of in 1984.
How?
There was something called the New Jersey Transportation Trust Fund.
It still exists. It's supposed to be the thing paying for all these things, and why isn't it?
Because it's going broke. You created it in 1984, and you like to make a joke about this. It was during the very short tenure I had in the state legislature. That's the proudest vote I ever cast. I cast the vote in favor of the creation of the Transportation Trust Fund, a dedicated fund. Say the term, the lockbox?
Yeah, the lockbox, right?
Well, Al Gore said there was a lockbox. This is a real lockbox. You take the money, you put it in the trust fund. It only goes to one thing: roads, bridges, mass transit. You couldn't go to anything else. Here's the problem. You had to keep putting money into the lockbox. You had to keep putting money into it. Politicians in Trenton knew, governors, legislatures knew that the money was running out. In June of 2016, it's going bust.
Really?
There'll be no more money in it. So then what happens to all these road projects? They don't get funded. So when you're sitting there on a highway or a bridge is closed down and you have to go on a detour, you don't have to ask why that happened. It's because this fund is running out of money.
Well, you know, one thing that we hear all the time now is, hey, let's fix this problem by filling the trust fund with money from a new or an extra gas tax. Why not?
New Jersey's gas tax is the second lowest in the nation. On a gallon of gas, it's about 14.5. It is 14.5 cents on a gallon of gas. Last time it was raised, 1988. People say, let's raise the gas tax. It sounds logical, sounds rational. Governor Christie says, no way, because I promised I would not raise taxes. A lot of Republicans in the legislature, no way, we're not going to raise taxes. You ask them, what's the alternative? They don't have an alternative. The Democrats, many of them want to do it, but the fact is, bottom line, if you don't have a new source of revenue, there is no other way to do this. We spoke to, on Capitol Report, Tom Bracken is the CEO, excuse me, of the State Chamber of Commerce. They held a conference in Atlantic City. 500 business leaders, civic leaders, politicians got together. Listen to what Tom Bracken, a business leader, this is not a pro-tax group, listen to what they said about how to fix the Transportation Trust Fund and the need for a gas tax. The Transportation Trust Fund that takes care of those projects is out of money, and you and your colleagues in Atlantic City, brought together by the Chamber of Commerce, say, let's find a way to fund it.
Correct.
With a gas tax?
Well, that's the most prominent discussed part of raising the money, and it makes some sense to use that as a component. There are others, but we have to have a plan. We want to be able to endorse something that the legislature or the governor puts on the table, and there's a lot of people waiting to endorse a plan. We need to have a plan to endorse.
You know, Steve, one plan that's been bandied about is a trade-off. Increase the gas tax, cut or eliminate the estate tax or the death tax. Is that going to fly?
Just to be clear, the estate taxes, people say it's more expensive to die in New Jersey than any other state. So people, live in New Jersey for years, and those who have some bucks, they move to Florida or some other state because it's cheaper to die, and we lose that revenue. Okay, here's the problem. I think that may make some sense, but Democrats like John Wisniewski, who heads up the Transportation Committee, a Democrat, says the problem with that is if we cut the estate tax and say, well, do away with the estate tax, it's you lose that revenue, and then you increase the gas tax revenue. It's net. There's no money. The problem is if the Democrats don't give on that, and the Republicans won't give them the vote on the gas tax, I hate to use the word stalemate again, but that's what I think is going to happen. If there's not some compromise in this gas tax, which I feel is the only way to fund this thing called the Transportation Trust Fund, it's going to run out of money in June of 2016, and we cannot afford to let that happen.
Well,
because the
everybody,
motorists deserve
all the elected
more.
officials know that as well. So something's got to give. Somebody's got to come up with a solution.
Ralph, I'll complicate it even more in the few seconds we have. The Eagleton poll at Rutgers University asked people about this, and they said, do you want your roads and bridges fixed? 2/3, absolutely, fix the roads and bridges. What happened when they asked them, are you willing to pay for it with an increase in gas tax? Go ahead, guess.
I would guess they said no.
They said no. The majority said no. So now politicians are in the legislature are torn with this. How do we fix it if people are saying they don't want an increase in taxes? I would argue.
Well, that's where leadership comes in, right?
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Leadership would demand, in my mind, that you explain to people there's no other source of revenue other than raising taxes. And by the way, the lowest gas tax in the nation. And why not do it when the gas taxes are at their lowest? That could be potentially an argument that the Democrats and the Republicans, and I would argue, that Governor Christie could make after the presidential elections. Assuming he doesn't win, he drops out, he comes back to Trenton, then potentially the government can function the way it's supposed to function, and some compromise can exist, and then a gas tax can be put in place. There'll be money to fix the roads and bridges. Imagine that in New Jersey.
We'll see what happens, Steve. Thanks.
Thanks, Raph.